This is episode 2 of Is This Real Life? The podcast. I have like 12 minutes before I have a meeting for work, so let's dive in. I'm going to try to do this in one quick, focused take. And this is our first video. I've never done this before, so this is kind of exciting. We're going to be talking about perception, objectivism, and synchronicities. So let's dive in. Let's just go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so I was on a date last night, and the guy said something really interesting. Hi, Jamie, if you're watching this. I hope you don't mind that I'm using our date as fodder for my podcast. But he said, I think that men and women are more equal than we realize, than we say we are. And I was like, okay, how tall are you? And he was like, I'm 5'10". And I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, and you're really built, like you're yoked. And he was like, yeah, thank you. And I was like, yeah, you're welcome. And I was like, do you know how tall I am? And he was like, no. And I was like, I'm about 5'3". I'm like 5'2.5". And he was like, okay. And I was like, yeah. And I weigh like 115. And he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, you could kill me with your bare hands in like less than 5 minutes. Maybe even like 30 seconds if you used your knee. And he was like, huh. I was like, yeah. And I was like, I could probably kill you, but I would have to use this bottle. And it was this glass bottle that was on the table. And he was like, I was like, yeah. And then I was like, you know your CEO that you've been telling me about, like really narcissistic, misogynistic, sexist psychopath that you work for? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, imagine if you didn't have your job there, because we work in a similar field. I was like, and we were both applying for that job, and we both walked in there. Which one of us do you think would get the job? You, the mediocre 5'10" yoked white guy, or me? And he was like, probably me. And I was like, yeah, you would. So we're equal. We're more equal than we say we are. And he's like, I think I have some learning to do. And I was like, yeah. It was just funny because it's like perception. Like I was pleasantly surprised at how willing he was to consider that his perception was totally off on how equal men and women are, and also how my perception as a woman is so different than his perception as a white guy, right? Okay, it reminded me of Margaret Atwood when she said, and she says it so much better, but men are afraid of being laughed at by women, and women are afraid of being killed by men. Maybe I got it perfectly right, I don't know. But, until we're either equally afraid of being killed by each other, or equally our biggest fear is being mocked by each other, we're not equal, right? But of course, someone whose greatest fear is being mocked is not going to understand, is not going to have the same perception. Just like me as a mediocre white woman, I cannot understand what it's like to be a black woman. I can't understand it. I simply can't. But I can try. And I can accept that I don't know. And I appreciated that Jamie was like, I have more to learn, right? Just like earlier on in the day, we were talking about our interests, and I was like, I love philosophy, and we were talking, and he was like, I was like, hey, do you know any female philosophers? And he was like, oh, but to be fair, no, but I don't know any male philosophers either. And I was like, so you don't know who Aristotle is, or Socrates, or Plato, or Marcus Aurelius? And he's like, oh, no. And it was just kind of, men are funny. I guess that's the summation of all that. So anyways, perception. Like, I love talking about perception so much because when it comes to objectivism, we know this. We know that reason plays a huge role in developing knowledge, in acquiring it, in living it, in standing in truth, right? Reason is important. Facts are important. But the most accurate source of knowledge is our perception. And there are tons and tons of books, studies, and just human experience that shows us that. One example, so my friend Haley, she's amazing, and I'll talk about her a lot on here. I can't watch movies because I have like severe ADHD when it comes to movies, but she can, and she summarizes them for me, and she does an incredible job. And one of them is, I know Amy Schumer gets a lot of hate. I personally have, I don't know, I don't follow pop culture very much, but she is in a movie where, and she may have written it, I'm not sure, where she believes she's a hot girl. She suddenly is like, I'm a hot girl. And her life changes because she's suddenly hot. And then she looks in a mirror or something happens where she's like, oh wait, I'm not hot anymore. And everything stops being fabulous. And it was all based on her perception. And I can tell you, I was in a long-term relationship and I was convinced in my head that I was not physically attractive. And it was interesting because it wasn't all that. I took that time to really develop myself academically and intellectually. I wasn't afraid of men. I rephrase that. I wasn't afraid of men in the ways that a beautiful woman is afraid of men. I wasn't afraid to talk to men on a peer level. Men became my peers during this time. And I was curious and I asked questions. I read a lot of books. I pursued masculine pursuits. And I know that masculinity is in many ways a construct in the context that I'm speaking about it. Because I didn't consider myself to be very feminine during that time. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the things that I learned during that time about myself. But it's interesting because once that relationship ended and I allowed my perspective to change I allowed myself to be more fluid and to hear the perspectives of the people that loved me who were like, you're not ugly, which is also a construct, and I understand that. I began to notice things that I hadn't noticed before. And of course, I had choices to make. Am I going to just, I don't know. We don't need to go into all that. We can talk about that another time. But it was interesting because it was all perception. Did I have the same face as before? Yes. Was I the same person as before? Yes. But it was, I'm kind of feeling a little bit triggered talking about that. So let's move to something else similarly related. My friend Dave. He's Korean. He's American, but his parents are Korean. And he came and visited, and we went to Harry Potter World together. And I had never, this is going to sound so incredibly ignorant of me, but I will tell you the truth about this. I'd never considered that I had white girl pretty privilege before until he pointed it out. And I drive this honkin' minivan, and it's ridiculous. And I kept, people let me in. Sometimes I'll just space out, and then I'll be like, oh, I gotta get over, and then I'll and just wave, and I'm like, beep, beep, thank you, And he was like, this is ridiculous. This is utterly ridiculous. Do you realize no one lets Asian guys do this? You are so lucky. And I'm like, Dave, I'm so sorry, Or we'd be about to I'd be like, oh, I wish we could get on this ride, but the line is so long. And this guy is just like, oh, would you like to get in front of me? And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Thank you. That's so nice of you. And, Dave and I were talking about, he's like, do you realize that you've done nothing to merit this? It's literally because it's your face. You are a short, white, blonde girl. That's it. And I'm like, I always thought it was because I was a nice person emanating warmth and kindness. That was my perception. But Dave's perception was, you have white American girl privilege. And it changed things for me because I started to realize I have done absolutely nothing. I've done nothing for the perks that I get as a white, mediocre woman. It's very, very interesting. And this was illuminated for me in a stark way a couple weeks ago when I was at the pediatrician's office with a couple of my children. And I was standing outside when I saw this conflict happening between these two men. They were black. One had dreads, one did not, to differentiate between the two of them. And I watched the whole thing take place. The one without dreads was minding his own business. The one with dreads was trying to create conflict, okay? And I was talking to the one without dreads. I was talking to his sister inside, and I was like, what's happening? And she was like, my brother came to help me out with my baby, and this guy just started yelling at him. And I was like, what can I do to help? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, I'll help you with your baby if you want. And we chatted, and I was like, sorry, and it's embarrassing. And she was like, I know. So, she and I became friends, and it was cool, and it was fine. And we were waiting for her brother to come in, and he didn't come in, and I was dealing with my own stuff with the pediatrician's office, because there's always, a million papers to sign, and I forgot to sign one paper, so they were like, okay, go home and come back in 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I was leaving, and the guy without dreads, long gone, but the guy who hadn't started the conflict was out there with there's a bunch of people in scrubs and a security guard and a hospital administrator, not hospital, but an administrator out there too. And they were all telling him he couldn't go back inside because he had been causing all this conflict. And I was like, I walked over and I was like, he didn't do anything wrong. He literally was just standing here, and this dude with dreads comes up and starts yelling at him. And I was like, his sister's in there with her newborn baby. She needs help. And they were like, oh, okay, go inside. And he was like, thanks, white girl. people. And I was like, damn, like, really? Like, you're just gonna listen to me? I'm just some random person that just walked out of there, like, and you don't know me? You don't know my background? I could be a pathological liar. I could be a psychopath. I could be a criminal. I had my mask on. Like, you don't know anything about me, and yet you're just gonna take my word for it. What is this? Perception, right? And so knowing that on both sides, like, perception has so much power over us. Here, one more example, real quick, is this study, and I don't have a source for this, and I'm so sorry. I was reading about this study where they had these people, they put makeup, like scars on their faces, okay? And they told them that the study was about how average people treat people with facial like deformities. I know that's not the right word, and I'm sorry, badly, okay? But that wasn't what the actual study was on. It was on perception, because then they took these people and they were like, look, we're gonna make your scars look even worse. But really, they were covering them up with more makeup so that these people looked completely typical. They looked like they had nothing wrong with their faces, nothing different with their faces, okay? And then they sent them out into the city and were like, now come back and report to us and let us know how you were treated. And so, like I said, these people, their faces are perfectly typical. There's nothing going on. They go out into the world, and guess what they report? Everyone was mean to us. Everybody treated us badly. We felt so scorned. We felt so alienated. We felt so isolated. Everyone looked at us meanly. Their perception was so powerful. So what does that say to us? In terms of objectivism, our reality, our truth is based on how we perceive the world. So why not take on a mystic approach, a mystic perspective? Now here's the thing. So synchronicities. Synchronicities are just little things, little signs from the universe, or whatever you want to ascribe it to, that just tell you your life is in sync. When I was religious, I would call these tender mercies or blessings, or like signs from God that he loved me. And now I just take it to mean my life is in sync. I'm where I'm meant to be. I'm doing what I'm meant to do. This is a sign to me, from a loving universe, that there is abundance, that all is as it should be, okay? And an example of a synchronicity is like when a song comes on that I love, or when I've just been talking about something and I see it happen, or like I see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 literally everywhere. Like they're constantly cropping up. Or I saw this band in Boston, Tall Heights. I saw them playing before they were famous, and suddenly I'm literally hearing them everywhere. And every time I hear them, I'm like, synchronicity, things like that, okay? And I hear the skeptics and the realists being like, you just hear what you want to hear. You just see what you want to see. Yeah, that's the point, idiot. Like, yes, I do, because I want to train my brain to believe that the universe is a loving place, that it's providing everything for me to be successful, that it's providing everything for me to be happy. I want to do that because I want my brain to believe that I have everything I need to live an abundant life. Why not trick my brain to believe that? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Who cares? Who cares? As long as I'm not buying into a paradigm of belief that is controlling, harmful, cultish, or exploitative, who cares? Who cares? It could be the truth, it could not be the truth, but perception is reality for me. Does that make sense? So I'm choosing to believe in synchronicities and see them because they are serving my brain. Hope this was helpful today, and have a great day, and look for synchronicities and find a way to let me know about them. I don't know, comment on something. There should be some way for you to comment here or somewhere else. Okay, bye.